Hi, I'm Jenny Fish from One Big Happy Yarn Company, and welcome to our Daisy Mae scarf knit along. I am so excited about this scarf. It has a daisy stitch pattern and pockets, both sides. Isn't that awesome? So it goes around like this, and then you have your pockets over here. And we have two different kinds of yarn that we've made this up in, but it takes 540 yards of a bulky weight yarn. We have used the Barocco Wizard, which is 85% superwash wool, 15% nylon, and it's really soft and lofty. And Sarah, you want to help me out here?
Sure, Jenny. Barocco Wizard is an I-cord yarn, which means it's a tube. So it is as wide and as thick as a bulky weight yarn, but it's full of air, so it's not as dense or heavy. I hope that helps.
Thank you. I love having her around. And then we also use the Barocco Vintage Chunky, which is just an amazing workhorse of a yarn, but it has some solid colors that are brilliant. So we also chose this. You can get the kit that has the yarn and the pattern at onebighappy.com, and you can choose the yarn, the colorway that you want on our website. So don't worry about that. Just go in there, check out your options, but just know that the yarn is a little different as far as the density of it, but you've got your stripes that are built into the ball and then your solids in this version as well. We're using a US size 10 needle. Now, I like to use circular needles. That's just a preference for myself. This scarf is knit flat, so you can use straight needles if you have them, or circular needles, whichever you prefer. But it's a US size 10 for the needle size. And then of course your standard, there's a row counter is always helpful, scissors, tapestry needle, and stitch markers. So I want to go over the pattern because the construction of this scarf is a little bit different than normal because the pockets are knitted into the project and then seamed up later. So I have a little sample here. Oh, and see my little washi tape on here? This is so I know where to put my things that you get a better view. So, right here. Okay, this is my little sample. Now, of course, when you make yours, it's going to be much larger and bigger, but the idea is it is in an I shape. So you have these long pieces here. This will be your middle section, which will be way longer, and then another section here to close it up. And you'll notice that on this little sample, I left all of my tails. I did not weave in my ends. And the reason for that is when you make your scarf, you want to leave really long tails and leave them on there, because at the end, I'm going to show you how to seam it up, and we use these tails for seaming. They're purposely here. So I'll go over that when we get to it, but just know that this was done on purpose, and I'll show you how to seam it up later with those tails. So they fold over like this, and that's how you get your pockets. I think that it's a good idea to have that in your brain before you get the project started, so as you're working along, you can understand, oh, yeah, this is going to fold in later and make a pocket, and you're not like, I don't understand what I'm doing here. If you have the construction idea in advance, then I think that it just helps follow the pattern along. But the pattern is really pretty simple. You go ahead and you just cast on. Use whatever cast on method you prefer. Long tail cast on, backwards loop, whatever. I use a long tail because I just prefer that. But it's 101 stitches that you're casting on, so that's quite a bit. But also remember to leave a very long tail, probably 18-inch tail. So add that little extra, you can wrap it around as you're casting on. Let me grab some yarn here and just kind of go over that with you. One of the tricks to make sure you have enough yarn to cast on, for every loop you wrap around your needle, that's one stitch. You can do that 101 times and then add extra, and that'll give you an idea of where to start. Just a quick little tip there. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and cast on a few to get started so we can just move right into the project. There's 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11. I'm going to cast on 25. Okay, so I've got just 25 stitches cast on here for myself, but you'll cast on 101. I've got a super long tail. Another trick on your tail is to put a slip knot in it so you don't accidentally start picking it up and knitting with it. Especially when you're leaving a long tail, that's a good trick to have. You'll feel it in your hand and know, oh, wait, I don't want to knit with that one because then I'll run out of yarn. Okay, so row 1, very simple. We're just going to knit across all those stitches. We're starting this foundation, and it's going to be right down here. But let me show you on this one. I know, I'm back and forth. But you cast on, and then we're knitting 1 row. So this is what we're working on, this edge piece right here. And then we're going to just bump right into working our daisy stitch pattern. In your pattern, you're going to see directions for pocket 1 and main section and pocket 2. It's pretty self-explanatory. You're doing the bottom of the eye for pocket 1, the main scarf, and then the top of the eye for the second pocket. Okay, so I've cast on it and I've knit 1 row. Keep in mind that there's going to be 4 stitches on each side of your work. That is for your border. So what I like to do, I'm on row 1 of the daisy stitch pattern. And the pattern will explain this, but you knit 4 stitches. They're going to be in garters. That means you knit, no matter whether you're on the right side or the wrong side, you're going to knit those first and last 4 stitches. And then we're going to slide a marker in there. And you'll see PM in your pattern. That means place marker. And SM means slide marker. So I'm going to place that there. And now I'm on row 1, which I'm going to knit until I have 4 stitches left. And then I'm going to place another marker, PM. So that's just simply knitting across all of those stitches in between. And it'll say work row 1 of the daisy stitch pattern. Well, the row 1 of the daisy stitch pattern, and that is the right side of the work you just knit. The daisy stitch gets a little confusing because all the magic is actually happening on the wrong side. So just keep that in mind, that your knit stitches are actually the right side of the fabric. Okay, so I've got 4 stitches left. I'm going to place my marker and knit those last 4 stitches and turn. Now I'm going to be on the wrong side of my work, but this is where the magic happens. We're going to knit these first 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, because those are garter stitch, which means knit both sides. I'm going to slide that marker. Now we're going into the fun part of this. This is really, I love this stitch pattern. It has this little star effect. It's very pretty. See, look at that right there. Isn't that pretty? Okay, how do we do that? Well, now I've messed up my scarf. You knit the first stitch. Then you bring your yarn between your 2 needles, bring it forward, and you're going to slide the tip of your right needle under 3 stitches, just like this. So I've scooped under 3 stitches, bring my yarn around and purl those 3 stitches together, but I'm leaving them on the needle. Then I'm doing what's called a yarn over, so I just wrap the yarn over the right needle, and then I'm going to purl by sliding my right needle under those same 3 stitches, wrapping the yarn around, bringing it through, and then dropping those 3 stitches. Bring the yarn to the back, and I'm going to knit into the next stitch. This pattern repeat is 4 stitch repeat, but as you go along, you'll see 4 plus 1. So for the whole row, it's 4 stitches for each little grouping, but you got to have that extra stitch at the very end. So when you see that in a pattern, for the pattern repeat, 4 plus 1 or 5 plus 1, you have multiples of that first number, and then after you're done with those multiples, you add that extra 1 or 2 stitches at the end. So that's what that means when you see it in a pattern. So I've knit that 1 stitch. I'm going to bring my yarn back to the front and do that same, slide my right needle through 3 stitches, wrap the yarn, purl that through, keep these on, bring the yarn back around for that yarn over, come back in and purl those 3 together and slide it off. Then knit 1. I'm going to do this all the way across till I get to my next stitch marker. Slide it through those 3 stitches, wrap and purl, but leave it on, yarn over, and then purl those 3 and drop it off, just like that, and knit 1. Okay, now I'm going to slide that marker and knit those last 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now I'm turning my work. I am on the right side of my work and simply just knit all the way across. And I'm going to show you when I get to those stitches that I worked, how that looks. I'm very visual on these, and keeping an eye on your work and knowing where those clumps of 3 stitches and the single stitch are, knowing where they are and where they move around in the pattern, something you want to keep your eye on. You want to look at those and see what they look like, because if you make a mistake, you'll be able to see it right away. And by that, what I mean is, take a look here. I've got a single stitch, 3 clumped stitches, a single stitch, 3 clumped stitches. That's how my brain works. As long as I look across there and I see that all the way across, I know at a glance that all those stitches should be right because they have that little pattern. So then I just knit all the way across, and when I knit that clump of 3, I'm going to knit 1 at a time, and then it'll space them out back to where they're supposed to be, and it fans out that pattern. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and knit all the way across, and then I'll show you row 4 of the daisy stitch pattern. Okay, so I finished row 3. I'm on row 4. This is the final row of this pattern repeat. Again, I'm going to knit those first 4 stitches. I am on the wrong side of the fabric. That's where the magic happens with this texture stitch, is on the wrong side of the fabric. Ah, there we go. Then in there. Slide that stitch marker. Now I'm going to knit 1 stitch, purl 1 stitch, and then knit 1 stitch. Now I'm ready to start that group of 3 that we did before. Now, one thing I want to show you, I'm going to back up and take these 3 stitches out because I want to show you a little trick in the pattern. Most of the time, if there is a stitch that's repeated, like the knit 1, they'll write the pattern so that they just say, always knit 1 and then work into your pattern. I purposely wrote the knit 1 into the repeat for this reason. I slide that stitch marker and I knit 1 every time. But I turn around and flip my work this way and look at what's on the right side of the work. And when you do that and you have it in your hands, when you see these 3, 1, 2, 3, that are coming from this flower design, just like that, then you know that your next stitch is going to be a single purl and a knit 1. Before you start that cluster that I showed you where you go under 3 stitches, flip it over. In order to make the pattern design appear, you need 1 stitch from one cluster, a single stitch that has a purl underneath of it, and 1 stitch from the other cluster. That's what makes this stitch pattern diagonal and go up. It's just a check in my brain. I'm checking to make sure that, yep, those are the 3 I want to gather together for my next cluster or daisy stitch so that it works out. And it doesn't take much to just flip it over and look at it. Okay, yep, now I want to do that 3. And I always just check right here because once you get this beginning going, the rest of it you just follow the pattern all the way through. Same as before, you go under 3 stitches, purl, leave them on, do your yarn over, and then purl and drop them off. And then you're back to the knit 1, work the 3 stitches over and over again. And you rotate between the starting off with the knit 1, then going into the cluster stitch, and then the knit 1, purl 1, knit 1. It's all in your pattern. But just keep an eye, keep flipping and looking at the right side, because like I said, all the magic happens on the wrong side, but you can't see the design unless you look at the right side. So I did this a lot through the whole project. I was looking at both sides of my work to make sure that I am in the right area and everything is lining up the way it's supposed to. So that's the daisy stitch pattern. That's the beginning of the first pocket. We're going to work this section until you've got several repeats, and that'll also be in your pattern. But the next thing I want to show you is how we bring it back in to make that eye shape. Let me grab my little sample here. How we work this and bring it in. So let me finish up this, get to the spot, and then I'll show you how we work those. Okay, so you're going to go ahead and continue this repeat 4 more times. Just follow the instructions in your pattern. But I want to show you how we transition from the long piece down to the narrower piece so we can just work on the center. The border that I have is in garter stitch on the sides of each of, on each side of the scarf. We've got garter stitch here and here and here. When I did the border for the pocket, you'll notice I have garter across here. Well, in order to get this piece, which again is the outside flaps, I need to go into some garter stitch up here as well. So in your pattern, it's 30 stitches of knit stitch, and you're replacing your stitch markers. And it's super easy. You're just going to go ahead on the row where you're ready to start your border, and it'll say first pocket border is how it's labeled in your pattern. You just go ahead and knit across. You'll just pop your stitch marker off. You'll knit until you have 30 stitches. Now I've got a little sample here, so obviously I'm not going to have 30 stitches there. I'm just going to randomly come in here and okay, there we go. Then you just replace your stitch marker. Then you knit. I'm on the right side of my fabric in my pattern. I'm going to knit across. You will be too. That will be the next row of your daisy pattern, your daisy stitch pattern. Follow that across, and then you can do it on either side. In the pattern, it says until you have 30 stitches remaining, and then you replace your marker. You can do it then, or you can do it on the other side, whatever is easiest for you, but you'll need to mark those 30 stitches. I'm going to do mine on the other side because I passed up the area that I needed to be at. So take that off. Turn your work around. So now essentially those 4 stitches that you had in garter stitch now has grown to 30. That gives you another border. So when you fold it in, you have that decorative touch at the top of your pocket on the inside. I know it's kind of silly, technical, but that's how I designed that, and it's all written in the pattern. I just wanted to show you that little trick of how I ended up getting the garter stitch at the top of the pocket. You just work those, and then don't forget you're going back into your daisy stitch in the middle after that stitch marker, and you just pick right up in the pattern. It'll show you what row of daisy stitch that you're on. Then you work that daisy stitch right through that center, and then you'll work your garter stitch on the outside. Follow the instructions in the pattern until you have the thickness that you need for your garter stitch, which is, I believe it's 2 more repeats of the pattern, of the daisy stitch pattern, which is 8 rows. Then you're ready to bind off to create that little eye. Let me go back to this little sample. Now we need to bind off. I just did a simple bind off like you do when you're binding off a regular project, where you knit, then knit lift that first stitch up and over, and then up and over, and you bind off until you have 4 stitches before your stitch marker. So I got 1 more, and then go back to knitting. So I've got 4 stitches there. Slide that stitch marker, work my daisy stitch pattern in the middle, which I've already showed you guys how to do that. Then when I get over here to my next stitch marker, I'm going to knit 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think of those. Those are my keepers. Those are going to be my border through the center of my scarf. And then these I'm going to bind off. And I'm binding off 1, 2, lift that up and over, lift that up and over, and lift that up and over. Now, you will notice that I am on the same row, and I bound off both sides on the same row. Now I'm going to cut my yarn. I'm going to leave a very long tail, because this yarn will also be used in the seaming when I'm done. Flip my yarn, slide it through, just like that. Now that is the first pocket of the Daisy Mae scarf. Just like that. You'll go ahead and follow. Now I do want to point out that I did cut the yarn and bind off all in the same row, both sides, and it's very even, and I did that for a reason. I like the symmetry of it. I like how it's even on both sides, but also too, I'm going to be using this later to seam up the pocket, and it makes it nice and neat. So thank you for joining me for the Daisy Mae pocket scarf. Go ahead and continue the middle section. You will be doing repeating that Daisy Mae stitch pattern 50 times, and then join me in episode 2. We'll go ahead and start this, or finish up the scarf by working the second pocket. Don't forget, you can get a kit with all of the yarn and with the pattern at onebighappy.com. And thank you for joining me for the Daisy Mae pocket scarf. Happy knitting!